Thanks for joining me today. We've got Christine on this episode, and we're going to talk about JIA, Juvenile Idiopathic Arthritis. How are you, Christine?
I'm great. Thanks, Clint.
Thanks so much for joining me on this episode. We've been in touch online for probably a good 6 months or even a little longer about your son Cole. And we're going to talk about him today and the great progress that he's made and all of the challenges and hurdles that he's had to overcome to get to now a wonderful health state. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Cole? How old is he? What's he like? Your little son.
He's 6 years old. He's a very social boy. He's very outgoing. He's very active. He loves all sorts of sports. Right now, he's on swim team and he's in soccer camp and he does martial arts a few times a week and probably would do any sport you asked him to. He just loves it. So he's terrific. He also has a lot of motivation for a kid. He's very disciplined. He can be very focused on the things that he really wants to accomplish. And I actually think his personality was really fitting for the challenges that he's had over the last year. So I'm kind of lucky as a mom that he really kind of looked at this diagnosis and with me, and we kind of attacked it like a challenge. I just feel lucky that he has those personality traits that enabled me to get through it with him.
Okay. Now, just talking about, I can see your face light up when you talk about Cole, and as parents, when we talk about children, and we were just before we started this conversation, before we started recording, all we talk about is kids, because as parents, we just become so protective. Our whole world, like my sister the other day said, the most important thing in my life are my two kids, and it just struck me, just that is the case. I mean, when we have kids, we would exchange our lives for our kids. They're just so important. And so when something like a serious health condition comes along, it's even worse, I think, than when it happens to ourselves, because the child just depends upon us as parents so much for the information, as the guidance as to how they can take action and so forth. So when he got diagnosed, what was the diagnosis? Tell us the story of how it happened and how did it make you feel, and just walk us through the whole process of how it transpired.
Well, he was 5.5 when he was diagnosed. So onset of his arthritis symptoms was June 13th, so a little bit over a year ago. He woke up one morning, walked into the kitchen, and his right knee was swollen. And he just got over being sick. So he did have an infection. He had a stomach flu. So I do think that was associated with, a trigger for these symptoms. And then 3 weeks later, his opposite ankle became swollen. So he had two joints affected. And so that was, a little over a year ago now. And so what we did is we, went to the pediatrician, of course, right away. We went the day after and, went through the whole course of, what to do when something like this happens. I mean, we thought it was a sports injury because he's such an active boy. And so we treated it that way in the beginning. We elevated his leg, we iced his knee constantly throughout the day. He wasn't, we kind of tried to restrict him from walking on it for a couple of days. He had stiffness. It was uncomfortable. It wasn't terribly painful, thank goodness, but it was uncomfortable. And then those symptoms, the symptoms of the stiffness and his inability to kind of move freely stopped. And within 2 days, he was running around like normal. So, but he still had this swollen knee. So we proceeded, to continue going to the pediatrician and do follow-ups. And, within a few weeks, nothing was changing. And so we went to the orthopedist and we had an x-ray. And then from there, of course, got blood tests and then went to the rheumatologist. So that was kind of our path.
And When you were going through this process, how long did it take to try and find an exact diagnosis, and who actually diagnosed him and with exactly what?
So they say this kind of swelling has to take place in the joint for 6 weeks for them to give you the diagnosis of juvenile idiopathic arthritis. And when we got to Stanford, which was the first hospital that we went to see a rheumatologist, he was at 5.5 weeks. So they wouldn't confirm the diagnosis, but they said, this is what it looks like. And of course, I wanted to get more opinions. So we did see 2 additional rheumatologists, as well as see many different alternative doctors to see what we could do outside of, the typical path, because the typical path meant kind of harsh medications that I really wasn't interested in at the time. If I could, put them off as long as possible, that's what I was looking to do, and see what I can do to help him.
So what medications was he being suggested, and who was suggesting those?
So the rheumatologist had suggested, and it was a number of them, suggested pretty much the same course of action, which was to inject his joints with steroids. And there was a consensus that it most likely was going to come back. The swelling, even, that the steroid was just a temporary relief of his symptoms. And so within 2 to 3 months, we'd probably be back again, and we could make the decision to do another injection, but that it wasn't something that was really going to solve the problem. So the next step would be to give him methotrexate. So that was kind of what they suggested, and that was the rheumatologist.
Okay. Yeah. So, I was on methotrexate, and over 90% of people with adult rheumatoid arthritis go on methotrexate at some point throughout the course of their disease. And anyone listening who's been on it or is on it knows that it is a serious drug. I mean, it's chemotherapy, cancer drug, and it has very, very severe fatigue side effects. That was the main thing that I suffered from, besides my liver blowing out, and I had to almost get off it because it's just so harsh on the liver. And my feeling for thinking about, a little boy who's be half my size, or maybe a third of my size in terms of body weight and an ability to handle the toxicity of that, it just makes me feel really awkward. I don't feel comfortable with thinking about putting a little perfect organic little bubble of joy on something that's very toxic and harmful for the body, and will really affect his energy levels. And so anyway, that's my first thoughts on that. And so I can totally understand that you'd want to explore other alternatives if there was anything available. And at this point, I just want to say that since we've been running the Paddison Program, it's coming on 5 years now, we periodically get requests from parents in situations like you were faced with in this moment, having to consider very, very serious drugs for very, very small humans who they love very, very much, and just with absolutely no good stories to fall back on or examples through which to follow. And it's all very, very scary, and it's very, very pessimistic in terms of outlook. And yeah. And in fact, as I mentioned just before we started recording, I have 3 people who are waiting on email replies from me right now about this exact topic. Can you help me? I will do anything. So desperate. My child, my early teenage boy, has JIA, and we're so desperate right now. And so my replies to them are going to be, listen to Christine's story, listen to what happens next. And so we'll get into that right now. But my concern for people around the world with a child with inflammatory arthritis or an autoimmune disease is just the lack of good examples of what's possible, and lack of a plan of how to go from A to B without all of that toxic medication. So I've set this up pretty well. Let's talk about what happened next, and you can explain whether or not he had to go on the drugs and how you went about proceeding from this point.
Well, they gave us this diagnosis, and I was expecting them to look for causes. Silly me. I just thought, oh, they're here to help me figure out what happened and what we can do to help him, and they do very few tests to look for, reasons why this would happen. I think like strep and Lyme is a couple that they run initially, because, those kinds of illnesses can lead to this kind of arthritis. But you're just, I don't know, I just remember feeling like, wow, where am I going to go from here? Because there is so little information alternatively on things that you can do to help your children. Everywhere I turned was the same. I got the same information. And so I was horrified, and my whole family, well, my husband and I were. And so I just enlisted healthcare practitioners that had other philosophies and other expertise. And I just kind of went to several people to see if I can find some answers. And I enlisted one wonderful holistic pediatrician to help me kind of dig for some answers. And we ran all sorts of blood tests, and, we ran food testing, and I did stool sample after stool sample. We were looking to see if we can find something so that I knew how to treat him. And certainly I worked with a naturopath to help me, because I knew, diet was going to be significant as well, and I needed advice on that. And I went to see an osteopath. I saw an acupuncturist, actually saw 2 different acupuncturists, found a wonderful one at the very end, which I'll tell you about, who was really helpful. But so I wanted to see what else can we do here to help him. So I guess to make a long story short, I was at the point where, okay, well, maybe I should back up. I was very into diet myself, as far as, just providing healthy options for my family. And so I was at the time kind of going paleo in my house. I was revamping my pantry and cutting out lots of different foods, and got my kids on a smoothie kick of, veggies and fruit. And so we were doing a lot of smoothies in the house, and I was removing, that I hadn't bought bread for a couple of months before his diagnosis, so we were making some changes initially, and I think that also did help him set him up for eventually, trying your diet. But initially we went paleo because I was reading so much about, grains being inflammatory, and they do believe in eliminating dairy, which is good. And gluten, of course, and other inflammatory potential inflammatory items. So I was gluten, dairy, and sugar-free in the house, pretty much. And so we started there, and we didn't get anywhere. He didn't improve. And then we went paleo, strict paleo. And when I say we did this as a family, because I really believe that that's the way you make this work. Everybody has to be on board. So we went paleo. And I tried this for a couple months, and without any progress. In fact, his SED rate elevated when we went paleo. So I was not sure what to do next. This is when I kind of went online again, because we were getting closer to the point where I was feeling some pressure from the rheumatologist that we need to do something.
Yeah, most definitely.
And of course, we were concerned that one leg could grow longer than the other. He could have some issues with his tendons in his ankle, or, any damage with his joints. So of course, I felt under the gun to, try to heal him. And so I was, just looking for answers on the internet, and that's when I found your video, which was extremely compelling to me. And I was very moved by it. And it made total sense to me, because after the infection he went through, he had some vomiting and diarrhea. And I thought, oh my gosh, what about if Clint's right? he has a total leaky gut, and these proteins are, you know, leaching through his gut wall, and his body's attacking. And this is causing, you know, worsening of his symptoms. So I thought, we have to try this, even though I did get advice from even alternative practitioners that, you know, they were kind of like, well, you did the diet thing, it's not working, you know. And I even had one person in particular say, okay, make a list of the things that you've done and let's cross them off together. And one was diet, cross it off. So I was supposed to be looking at other options. I don't know what those other options were, because we were doing supplements. We were doing herbal supplements at the time too. I was doing some also homeopathy. You know, we were doing all sorts of things, but I was supposed to cross off diet, and I kept coming back to it. Every time I was doing research, I kept coming back to it. And so that's what felt right for me. So that's when I found you, and I said, we have to try this. And so you basically saved our lives and saved my son's life. So amazingly enough, after 3 weeks on your diet, his SED rate and his CRP was completely normal. 3 weeks, that's all it took. You know, may feel like a lifetime when you're going through it, but it's amazing how quickly it went. And then, but his symptoms were still there, so we were very concerned. And that's when I was writing a lot on the forum. I don't get it. Why is his blood work fine? I'm not seeing any changes. I was getting nervous. And soon we started to see the bone of his knee, and it was taking shape, and very small improvements. They were tiny. But within 4 weeks, he was like 85% improved, I would say. So we were almost there.
Sorry, did you say 4 weeks or 4 months?
Yeah, about 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, so yeah, weeks,
yeah, so
right?
3 weeks,
super fast.
So 3 weeks, and then his blood work was normal. But then 3 to 4 weeks more until we saw the inflammation go down, right? But you know, I wasn't sure it was going to happen, because it felt like it was taking a long time.
Anyone who's with an adult listening to this thinking, are you kidding yourself? That's a long time. I mean, you know, as an adult, it can take years. So,
Right.
so I'm not saying that, you know, all I'm saying is, compared to adults, that's quick.
Yeah.
But obviously when it's a little one who's got a lot of challenges, doesn't know why he's having to eat this way maybe so much, and as parents you're anxious because the doctors are breathing down your neck. Yeah, as you say, it can feel like an eternity.
Feels like right.
Yeah.
And with, you know, this happened in mid-June. So June, and now we're at so I started the diet September 13th. So we had a few months before I even started the diet, right? And then it was, maybe 2 months until we got to about 80%. So that's several months. And for several months, I think that was one of the hardest things as a parent, is to see this constant inflammation and not be able to fix it every day. And so it took every, you know, ounce of my patience to just continue and have faith that it was going to work. And so we kept going. And so we stalled out for a few months, and that was the time that I was most nervous, because I wasn't sure we were going to get to 100%. But I just kept thinking about it and thinking that, why would we make so much progress, like such huge progress, and then just stop? And it was hard for me to believe that he wasn't going to get there, but there was no change after that. So I thought, there's got to be something he's still eating that's affecting him. There has to be. And so I documented everything he ate since the beginning I started on the paleo approach. So every day I wrote down everything that he consumed. So I was like, okay, well, this shouldn't be so hard. Let me go back and look at every day and see what there could be. And the only thing I could think of that could possibly be, you know, keeping his progress from moving forward was nuts. Since he's so active and we're always on the go, I bring nuts with me. It's a good source of protein. It's a good source of fat for him. And he loves nuts. And I'm thinking, maybe he's consuming too many nuts. And so I just completely took away nuts. And within 3 weeks, he was 100% symptom-free.
That is an absolutely remarkable story. So can I just sort of bullet point it back at you, and you just confirm that I've understood it correctly for listeners?
Because I said too much.
No, not at all. No, it's just that this sort of stuff is unheard of for a lot of people. Well, unheard of because doctors never talk about changing the diet, first of all. Did any of your rheumatologists say, maybe you should change? No. Okay. Big head shake there. Big head shake. Okay. And some people at some other practitioners were quick to say, well, you've tried it. Let's forget it. Let's move on to other things. Okay. So first of all, no doctors are talking about changing diet. Parents with kids aren't being told to look at diets because they get all of their advice and suggestions from their medical practitioners. So they're not talking about changing diet. And so this is such a unique thing. So let's just get it totally clear here. What happened? So you decided to follow the program that I've put together for adults with rheumatoid arthritis, and carefully and with great caution, apply it to your son and watch his every response. After 3 weeks, his SED rate, which was elevated, dropped to completely normal. And then subsequently, after another 3 to 4 weeks, he was at 80%, but not quite all the way there. So he still had some symptoms, even though his SED rate remained low. And then it took you maybe another couple of months to get him to 100%. No?
3-4 weeks.
3-4 weeks after you took out the nuts, which were in the program. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I did start acupuncture at the same time. Well, I think I started acupuncture like a week after I took out the nuts. So that could have been helpful too. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's say that maybe it contributed a bit as well. Okay. So, right. Now, first of all, you're Mum of the Year. Let's just give you that. And Cole is little 6-year-old of the year, or 5 3/4 at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's amazing.
And this is very, very inspiring. So let's talk about the challenges that came with the dietary side of things, because it is a challenging diet. It's challenging for adults. It must have been challenging to implement something so restrictive for a 5.5, 6-year-old. Talk about the challenges with that. Or you mentioned earlier that Cole is quite a determined young fellow, so maybe he didn't have as big as challenges what a lot of other little ones might have.
Well, I think, I can't imagine what it's like to be a 5-year-old and sitting in the rheumatologist's office listening to this conversation. I actually thought they were going to tell him to step out, and one of my, maybe my husband could sit with him while I talked to the rheumatologist, because I was surprised they say all these things in front of kids. I'd be terrified if that was me. So I think that must have entered some of this, his determination to get better, and to get better through just eating healthy foods rather than taking these harmful drugs, right? Or potentially harmful drugs. Because I'm sure he could also see the looks on our faces. You're not going to smile when the doctor says certain things, he's a smart kid, and any child would, I'm sure, sense their parents' hesitation to do something. And it's pretty tough to have a conversation with the doctor and not have any, have a blank face, not have any emotions involved in it. So I know he knew that we wanted him to be healthy, and we were looking. He knew I was looking for alternatives, and we had a frank conversation before we started the diet. And I really believed in it, and I think that's something that a parent needs to have. They need to believe that this is going to work, because if you believe in it, your child's going to believe in it. That's the one benefit of having a young child. You're their example, and children tend to believe what their parents believe. And when I've always kind of talked about foods too around him. He knows that, eating healthy is important, and he hears me talking to friends about foods. We also have friends that have certain food sensitivity, so he knows he's not the only one that may have to eat a little differently. And I would definitely bring that up, on purpose, so that he would hear about that, so he wouldn't feel alienated. And so he was on board. He was like, let's give this a try. But he's still 5.5, so there definitely were some bumps in the road in the beginning. I mean, he ate salad before, which I don't know. I hear and I know when I go out with my other friends and we go out for lunches, and this is before his diagnosis, he would have a salad with a Caesar salad with grilled chicken on it, and my friends would be like, how do you get him to eat that? And so he did eat some healthy foods before, so that was helpful, but he couldn't eat the Caesar part now. He couldn't have the cheese and the dairy and couldn't have his ranch dressing. And so even though he ate healthy foods, there was certainly some of the other influence in there to make it tasty. And so all of a sudden he was like, oh, I'm supposed to eat this without any oil or anything. So that was a tough one. So he did it a little bit in the beginning, and then we had a little difficulty with it. So everything that he wouldn't eat, I tossed in my Vitamix, and it worked. I mean, it was amazing. I was like, I would ask him, do you want me to make this salad, or would you like to have a smoothie? He'd say, I'd rather have a smoothie. So I throw it in the blender, and we got away with all of our salads in the blender. And that's, and then you can put everything in the blender. I mean, you can hide anything in there. I mean, I was giving him bok choy and mung bean and cabbage. I mean, those are strong flavors, but I wanted him to have the glutamine in the cabbage, and I wanted him to have all these important nutrients and things that were going to help heal his gut. So, we did spinach, we did romaine, just kale, lots of kale, So anyway, and then, I put some fruit in there, and it was fine. He enjoyed them, actually, and I drank everyone with him. So we all kind of got healthier too in the process. And so I did do everything with him because, and when we sat down for family meals, we were all eating the same foods. And I didn't put anything in the house that he could see that wasn't what he could eat, because I didn't think that was fair. I wanted him to get, the best shot he could to be able to do this. So we did have the first week is the hardest. It's definitely the hardest. It's the most limiting. The whole idea is to start basic, and start small and see what your body can tolerate, and you build from there. So that's what we did. And so, we got through the first few days, and I have to say, I gave him a couple little toys to get him through. I'd say, every few days you get through, I'll give you a little treat. And they were just little toys, and that was great. And it worked. And he did require that after he got it I don't remember how many times, 2 or 3 times. And then after that, it was fine, because by day 6, so one thing I did do, I followed all the right foods, and I did follow the protocol, but I did add things in a little early. I remember you had this caveat that said, this is an adult diet. This is not prescribed for children. So, you have to be careful. And of course, so I weighed him every day. I made sure that he wasn't losing weight, because that was very important. And I measured his knee every day. Although in the end that wasn't helpful, but I didn't know at the time. It was something I was doing. So it made me feel like, we were doing this right. And that was part of your baseline. Let's measure these joints. Let's see if there's a change. And I have to say that for Cole and I, it was a little trickier navigating the diet, because Cole didn't have pain. I was very lucky that way. And for the adults who did this program, they typically had pain, and they could see from what they were eating, what if they would add in something that affected them, they would feel it, and they'd be able to monitor that and say, okay, well, I guess I can't eat that, or I can't just eat that right now, but maybe I can introduce it in another week, or that's the way you kind of go through the diet. But I had no way of doing that, because nothing changed ever. He didn't have any stiffness anymore, so I couldn't measure that. I measured his knee for swelling, but that never changed. And he didn't have any pain, so I couldn't go by that. So we did your protocol, but I remember adding in black beans day 6. I'm not sure when, maybe that was after the 12 days I was supposed to do that, but I started that earlier because I needed to keep him on this diet. And I needed to get enough calories in him. And I needed a slow protein in his body, because this is a kid that plays soccer and swims and does also, so he needed to eat a lot. And I did. I fed him constantly throughout the day. So anyway, so we had a few bumps in the road in the beginning, but after that, it was pretty smooth.
Listeners, if you've just covered so much incredibly information dense
I
materials.
rambled
No,
much.
not ramble. Like the last sort of 5 or 6 minutes of you speaking there, people should just flick back 5 or 6 minutes and listen to it again. You've just covered some of the most incredible principles of looking after someone with this disease from a natural point of view. And I just, that last, the way you just spoke was sensational. Normally I take notes and then repeat back at the end of the podcast all of the important points, but there's no way I could have kept up with that. There was, you probably said 15 imperative must-do things or tips that people could use when they're helping their child with this condition. And so I could not keep up with all those things. So many of them were so important. So listen back to the last sort of 5 or 6 minutes again and get those all again. Now, how is he now? So you mentioned that his swelling was not going down and it just seemed, I just want you to clarify, how is his knee now with regards to the swelling, and how is he like with his mobility and everything?
Oh, no. I mean, as of I don't know the exact date, but it was like the last week of March or the first week in April. He had no more swelling whatsoever because we went to the rheumatologist. I actually thought there was a little bit left in his ankle. I thought before I went to the rheumatologist that there might have been a tiny bit of swelling in the ankle because it appeared a touch bit thicker to me than the other one. But she said that it was perfect, that there was no swelling there. So, it's just me looking at it every day, and it's possible that that ankle is just slightly different than the other one now, but you can't really see
You're
it.
also, as a mum, mum's always going to look at the tiniest detail, worried about her son more than anyone else is ever going to study it,
And it's hard to know what they look like before. That's another thing to think about, right? We never stare at our kids', joints every day to see if, anything's changed. So, maybe that ankle was thicker to begin with. Maybe it was what transpired over the course of however many months. But, we're thrilled that he has no more symptoms.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's absolutely sensational. So how do you guys eat now? And have you stuck with this, or has he started to eat some different things? And how do you feel about, raising him from this point?
Well, let's see. So April, May, June, July. So it's been 4 months that he's had no swelling. I stayed true to the exact diet about 2 months after his symptoms were gone. And then I started trying a little bit of gluten at first, which, who knew if that would have been maybe it wasn't even a problem to begin with, but it was something that I wanted to eliminate just to make sure. And he's been fine. So he does eat a little gluten now. I'm not even willing to give up my gluten-free items though, because in my mind, they're healthier than eating the gluten. So we still eat the gluten-free items that we found, brands that we like, but we do eat some gluten now. And I've given him some animal protein once a week for maybe, I don't know, I'm not even counting really, the last month, maybe 5 weeks. Maybe once I gave it to him twice a week, but it's only on the weekend so I can keep track, because I don't want to have to write everything down every day anymore, because I've done that for a year or whatever. So in my mind, it's like on the weekend, which is when we're socializing more, when we may have a barbecue. I want to give him a little flexibility to have something if he wants it. His taste buds, I think, have changed a bit. He doesn't ask for things that he used to want. I've even offered him things that he used to eat and love, and he's not even interested. So I'm really happy about that, actually. But I'm not it's not that I'm not a vegan. It's not that I believe in 100% veganism and this is the way everybody has to live. I don't necessarily believe that. I think if you can get an animal protein from a good source, which, that's tricky these days. But if it's organic and it's grass-fed, and this is the best you can do, right? And it's, it's raised healthy and all of that. I think that from time to time, I think it's fine. So he's been having a little bit of animal protein on weekends, and he seems to not have any symptoms from eating it. And so we've just been doing that, and we're going to see what happens from here.
Okay, great. So, my take on that, obviously listeners would be keen to get my thoughts on that. I've said before to adults who ask me, well, I sometimes get the question, when I've done this and I feel normal again, can then I go back and eat my X, Y, Z and drink my coffees and all that sort of stuff? I'll be cured and then I can do whatever I want. So my thoughts on that are, this is an autoimmune disease. This is something that once is wired a certain way, is very difficult to unwire ever again. And so I'm cautious as someone with an autoimmune disease not to try and throw any kind of little kindling on what may be a very, very tiny little bit of inflammation in the body. I don't want to stir something up that could be like a sleeping bear. I want it to keep hibernating for the rest of my life. And so for a normal person with a normal human digestive system, if they were to eat 90% plant-based whole foods, low fat all the time, and then have a little bit of anything, whether it be animal protein or dairy products or even something that we'd all consider really bad, maybe like, eat, I don't know, dirt or something. Yeah, like it's something terrible, right? The body's very robust. I mean, we see this with people who eat, according to my definition, a terrible diet for decades and no obvious external symptoms. I mean, the Western diet is the exact diet that's used with rodents to create disease. If they want to give a disease to a rodent so that they can then experiment on how to improve them with a drug, they give them the Western diet, right? But some human beings can survive on this for decades without finally, getting some chronic disease. But of course they will eventually. And so the body's very robust against the occasional thing that isn't ideal. And that's how I feel about this. So it's an evolving or a continual analysis. If he's doing fine with a little bit of animal protein here and there, then that might be okay. Is it optimal? Definitely not. Is it what's needed during the initial stages to reverse the swelling and reverse his inflammation? Definitely not. And so it's you as a family need to think about these things. And my family will be vegan. Certainly I am. Melissa sometimes, she'll sometimes eat some dairy products. She hasn't tasted meat. She's never had meat in her whole life. Not a fish, not a chicken, not an egg, nothing, right? So she'll never, ever have meat. But sometimes, she won't object to having some butter on toast if she's starving and she's out and it's the only thing that they have. Whereas me, because of what I've been through, I find it abhorrent. So anyway.
For sure. And I would never suggest this to somebody who has symptoms or, is
on the healing path. Yeah.
I mean, when we did your diet, we did it 100%. And I cooked everything too. I mean, we never ate anything from a package. So, and I baked when I needed to. If you go to a birthday party, I mean, there's challenges when you have kids. You're around all of this. You go to a birthday party and it's like, oh my gosh, we have another birthday party next week, and I know I have to bake because I feel, I don't want him to be left out. So I would make something for him that he could eat. And for the holidays, it was the same. It was the same thing. And now, we found some really great recipes, and I like to bake them anyway. So we do that from time to time. But so I don't know. I just think you make it work. You replace things. He used to eat ice cream. Now he eats sorbet. And he doesn't have it every day, but on an occasion, I want to treat him with something. I can give him something. I mean, there's always an alternative. You just have to find it. And sometimes it's a little trial and error to find out what it is that your child likes, but they're out there. And I think in the beginning, can be very overwhelming if you have to really overhaul your pantry and start from scratch. But it's like anything else. Once you learn how to do it, it becomes part of your routine, and you figure it out, and you find the products that your family likes. And
it's a huge challenge. There's no doubt. It's a huge challenge for adults, and it's a huger challenge for parents with a child. But it's equally as important as the size of the challenge. Like, the importance is infinite, isn't it? I mean, there's nothing more important than setting a child's health up for the rest of their life. I having been, involved in this kind of work now for long enough, I've met parents who have children with JIA personally, and I've had conversations like this. Child with JIA chatting to me and talking about, all the drugs he's on, and even worse than methotrexate, right? So it starts to escalate. You start to get into some more, really, really heavy stuff, some of the most dangerous stuff you can legally buy as drugs, or not buy, but the most dangerous legal drugs you can take. And chatting to him, and naturally, I say stuff. So what are you eating? What do you do? Oh, as he's snacking on some kind of, junk food. Oh, what do you have for breakfast? Oh, there's a product in Australia called Wheat Bix. I think you guys call it Weetabix, but anyway, it's the same sort of product, right? Oh, breakfast, I love having that. And I said, what do you put on that? Oh, milk, I love my milk, I cover it with milk, blah, 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 blah. And so I speak to the mum and the dad, and I say, you might seriously want to have a look at eliminating the milk out of his diet. Dairy is one of the biggest aggravators for adult rheumatoid arthritis. Oh no, he loves his breakfast. Like, he loves his milk and Wheat Bix. We could never take that away from him because that's his favorite meal of the day. And so you're in this situation where you feel that you have some extremely important changes that need to be made in this family, but with a routine that's hard to break. And as an outsider, and also not as the parent of the child, it's not my place to then say much more other than my experience, my journey. And people, in that position might say, oh, well, that's for adult and juveniles different. And that's why I wanted so much to talk to you about this, is because I believe that we have the same situations going on, just on a smaller human being. But I do believe it's the same systems at play, and I believe that the foods required to calm everything down are the same. It's just more challenging because the person's little, they're growing, as you say. You want their all their bones to grow at the same rate, and we want him to be active and social and everything. I mean, there's so many things at play.
And we're all brainwashed to think that milk is the only way to get there. Like, that's what blows my mind, forget green leafy vegetables that are so high in calcium that you can just throw in a blender with some berries that are low glycemic fruits, and the kids will love it. I make pops now for my kids, and I put them in the freezer, and they just munch on those all day because they're made of veggies, 75 veggies, 25%, fruit, and they're delicious. So there's just ways of getting around it. And I think it's just this belief system that it's tough to transform. I think when, from the beginning of life, everything is about milk for the baby, right? And then somehow once the baby's weaned from the breast, they're supposed to drink cow milk, and it's just, and that's the only way that they can get calcium because the kids are not eating, vegetables. But there's so many ways you can even hide vegetables, but we're just not counseled on any of that, as mothers. The pediatricians generally don't give us ideas for how to make that work, right? And they just rely on milk for everything, I think. That's a part of the problem. But I do know that there are personalities of children that are more difficult to feed. I have one of them. My second child doesn't have the same personality as my first child. And I'm sure she would have been more challenging if I had to work with her with this diet. And so just with that said, I'd like to say that so the parents, if you have one of those challenging children and you can't follow Clint's protocol, exactly, with the way you build foods on a daily basis, I would pick from his list of foods and go with that. Just at least take away the irritants in the body that are preventing the child from healing. Because I really did, like, we went paleo. I did different foods before, and we did not have any success. Actually, it got worse. And so I really do believe those animal proteins were causing his body to create more antibodies, which is the problem in the first place. It's right. It's an overactive immune system. So you have too many floating antibodies. And so these drugs just kill the antibodies, right? But if you keep creating more by eating the wrong foods, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to be able to heal, right? So I think that's why this disease is, like, with all the doctors say, it's incurable. It's incurable because we don't change our lifestyle, right? The drugs can't do it by itself. As hard of the drug it can be to suppress the immune system, if you keep creating the same problem, it's still going to be there. So I don't know. I wish I could. I mean, I'm here today because I really want parents to try this, and it was just no choice for me, because I felt like, well, I could do this, or I could spend years of my life going down this other path, and with all these potential problems, and risks to his health. And I don't know, I couldn't do that. So I was lucky in the beginning, for sure, that it didn't go from zero to so severe that I had to give him something. And I'm sure there's situations out there that are different, and these rheumatologists are very much needed. But like you've said, I've heard you say that you can be on these drugs and still do this diet, and it can still work. You can eventually titrate down the drug till it's no longer, right? If you're on this diet. So it makes a huge difference.
No, you covered everything I wanted to add there. That's right. If the symptoms are so great that damage is being done to the joints and inflammation is out of control, then medications are a godsend. Medications are there to be used. And I went on the medications, and daily I see people who correctly need to go on the medications, because a subtlety of this is that inflammation itself creates more leaky gut. So this is a phenomenon that's been well studied. It's very complex, and it happens at the molecular level, at the gut wall, and it's a complex mechanism that involves all sorts of difficult terms to pronounce and explain that I don't fully appreciate yet myself. But the bottom line is that inflammation in the body creates more leaky gut, and so we have a duty of care to keep the inflammation down so that we can actually heal our gut, because it can't heal while it's inflamed and more perforated. And so if the dietary interventions aren't getting any results like we saw with Cole, then medications are required. But just as you said, those medications can be monitored, and inflammation monitored monthly, and with time, with consistent levels of low inflammation in the body, the drugs can be reviewed and potentially lowered, and potentially even removed altogether, depending on how the child goes. So, wow, what a fantastic summary of what you've been through in the last year. I mean, who would have thought, huh? What a whirlwind last 12 months for you.
I wish, I don't know. Of course, I wish that I had heard about this sooner. Or have known somebody that had gone through this path, because I think, it's so horrifying in the beginning, and it can kind of shut you down too, how scary it is, instead of knowing that there are other solutions that you can follow. And I think I would be excited if I had learned about this and learned that there were other children that were able to be, there were children that were able to be healed through this way. I don't know. I just think of all the dark places that you go when you hear about this disease, and it's tough. And I'm thinking about that as we're talking too. I'm thinking about, the mom and dad that, have maybe been struggling with this for years, and it's like, how do you then start over, really? Go back to trying something new, when you're probably exhausted from everything that you've done so far. And it's tough to find that kind of hope that things can get really, that you can make such improvement. I just hope people believe in this, I hope they believe that diet can truly heal. And it's hard for, I know, a lot of people, because if their doctors aren't saying it to them, then whoever else is saying it's just a bunch of, it's hokey, that, it's not real, but it is real. And, the rheumatologist, that's not their training, and their training is to treat symptoms. And so, I think that there's definitely a place for them, but, if you want true healing, I think you have to do it yourself. I hate to say that, but I just don't know how many rheumatologists out there that are supportive of diet per se. And I think that will change. Like you had said that you wrote a pamphlet.
Right. Yeah. It's the perpetual, nearly finished document. Yeah.
It's in the works, but I'm just hoping that more and more doctors will learn from this. And I'm certainly going to, our rheumatologist knows about it, and we have to have another point. Well, she asked us if we could come back, and I said, sure, we'll come back, just to get another evaluation so she can see that he's still symptom free.
Is she paying you for this one? How much do you have to charge? How much does she charge for you to tell her what needs to be done with her patients?
I'm just hoping that there's some interest here. Then, wow, this worked for this patient. Let me document everything I can, and maybe I can give that information out. I mean, it doesn't hurt to give the information out and share it with the patients. Well, that's the
last thing I wanted to ask you about. Yeah, is there is, depending on what you want to do with your life. I made this decision several years ago. Melissa said to me, if we can help one person by sharing everything we've learned, it's worth putting the time into putting all these materials together and making it available. And we decided not to publish a book because we thought, well, maybe no one will get the results that I did, or maybe no one's interested. And so we just put it on the internet as a instantly available thing. And we've never had time to take it to the next level, because the scale of it and the rapid uptake of it has kept us so very busy. But in the same way, you're at a point now where you have a unique insight into dealing with a child with this condition in a way that I don't have, and in a way that I don't know if any other parent has. And so you've got something to share that many, many people are interested to learn more about. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because people with a child with this condition will want to know, well, what goes into the smoothies? When did you give them? And where did you get these foods? And how did you do this and that? I mean, the number of questions actually, and the detail of those questions is almost endless. And so, if you felt like putting together, either we could do another one of these where you can go through all of your strategies and plans in more detail, or you could put something together in a PDF document or a website or whatever. I mean, I really feel that there's so much desire for the information that you've got, because your results for Cole are amazing.
Well, I did start a website.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's very basic. I'm not a web designer.
Sure.
And so I just kind of one afternoon got his story up there. And, it's just a few different subjects, you could say, and with some information. And I thought that might be helpful to just, get some information out there, and maybe somebody will come across it, I hope. And it's not really that ready for viewing,
right?
But it's a work in progress right now. And I'm just not sure, like I haven't even tried to see if it'll come up if I, just put it in my browser and see.
Sure. Okay. Well, why don't we just, to be determined on that, we won't maybe, if people are listening to this podcast well after it's been released, Right now it is late July 2016. So if you're listening to this and it's a couple of months beyond that, then there might be a link on our show notes at paddisonprogram.com, and then you'll be able to find this episode by just searching through the podcast history, and we might have a link up there to a website. So go and check it out just in case, because Christine may have got that to a point that she's happy to release to the world. And similarly, my homework is to finish the guide for rheumatologists, which I've been working on inside our community forum for everyone in there, and so I will have that completed shortly. It's one of those, it's just such a beast, that one, because I'm trying to cover every single thing, and I think I just need to sort of tie it up and get it out, and then refine it once it's out there, because we all need the document to show to our rheumatologists all the scientific evidence and the support behind this approach, especially when we're talking about kids, because we feel a little bit sheepish to do the wrong thing when it's our child. I think we're willing to put ourselves through anything, but when it's our kid, we're nervous.
But I find it odd that diet can't be suggested, because it's a healthy diet and there's nothing going to be harmful about it. On the flip side, what they do suggest are all these drugs where there's plenty of side effects and complications from. And so I don't know why it would be hurtful to say, there is a diet out there that could improve your symptoms, and just and certainly people would have to get support elsewhere, but there's plenty of support through your forum, and that's another thing I want to mention, because I used your forum, and it's, when you're doing something different or non-conventional, you may not be met with people that feel the same, and it's tough when you don't have support with what you're doing, and that's what the forum's about, is providing that support. And there's a lot of really educated people there that have gone through their own battle with RA, and have so many stories and so many tips and recipes and everything. And I think it was just invaluable. And so I think people should surround themselves by people who are going to support them with this diet, and get support maybe from your forum if they need to. And I would think that if you have a child, it depends on the personality, of course, and what your circumstances are, but I would imagine it would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I implore people, it's the best place to be in the world. If you've got inflammatory arthritis, come join the forum. I mean, for a small monthly investment, you get life-changing information, and we're there to transform lives and make people feel confident and reassured, and what they're doing is wonderful, and to get massive results. I mean, it wouldn't be so popular and be growing so quickly and be such a success if people weren't getting results. Yeah,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
People would soon look to other ways, and look to other ways to spend their time.
And people who, like, I've seen some of your other podcasts of some of your members that have struggled with their disease for a while before they found you, right? And they've completely turned their disease around. So, I think that's another question in people's minds is, oh, well, he didn't, because I actually got this feedback from somebody I was talking to. Oh, well, he didn't have his arthritis for that long, and so that's why it worked for you. And it has nothing to do with it.
It's got nothing to do with it. No, it's sad.
I mean, you can have it for 20 years and change your diet, and you can still get results. Like, I remember reading about people who felt a change in their pain level within a day from eliminating those foods that irritated their body, right? Mm-hmm. So doesn't matter what stage you're at, it's going to work. You just have to believe it. Yeah. And try it. I mean, what do you have to lose? That's what I thought. I was thinking back to, I'm getting this feedback that I'm working on diet and it's not working, and so I should just go to try something else. And I thought to myself, well, what do I have to lose, really? I mean, I need to feel like I've tried everything. I need to cross those things off my list. Now, if I went to something else and never tried your diet, I'm always going to think to myself, oh my God, what about if Clint was right about those animal proteins, and what they did to the body? And I mean, you have so much information. It's all based on research too. That's what's so great about this. You can look up this information and find it validated. I mean, this is not baloney, you know? So I don't know. And so I want to take the opportunity to thank you for, you know, I mean, you struggled with this disease for years and you spent so much time, you know, putting together this program to help other people. So, and by the way, I'm not getting anything from Clint from talking to you. This is all my doing. I just want people to know that I'm for real, and I'm not getting any kickbacks anyway, and that, you know, what you did was phenomenal, and what you're doing to devote your life to helping other people. And I think you're doing it because you know what it's like. You've been there, you've had that struggle, and you know how life-changing this can be. And what better reward than to change somebody else's life that positively, right? Give them back their life, basically. And that was my biggest thing. When this happened, I was so devastated. I was like, wait, I had a normal life and a normal kid, and the next day my life is completely changed. And now I have a new normal that I don't even want to adjust to. Like, I don't want to accept. This is not what I want to do, you know? And I don't want this for my family. So it's a huge adjustment to have a child who's has an incurable disease. So I know what it's like to be on that other side now. And my heart goes out to all those families. I don't know, you know, I don't know how I would have done it. And I hope that I never have to again. So I hope somebody takes this seriously.
No, I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. And if you ever put up your hand to help in a more of a sort of, you know, day-to-day way, then you'll be inundated with people wanting more information. So you've done enough for today, and that's if this is it, then I'm still very grateful, extremely grateful, because I do get tremendous amount of satisfaction, and it's beyond satisfaction. I can't think of the right word. It's an elation. I get goosebumps when I hear your story. I well up when I hear about Cole, and you know, it's his whole life, you know. We're not talking about even a pet. We're talking about a little boy. So, yeah, this is more important than anything else. So, yeah. And hopefully I'll meet him one day. That'd be great.
Oh, I know. He'd love to meet you. You're like the hero in our house. Are you kidding? He'd love to meet you. Yeah, and he's got the Australian accent down really well, too. So I think you'd be impressed.
What's his
word?
He
likes to do accents.
Awesome.
We have a friend who's Australian, so I think that's how it started.
Yeah, nice.
And he speaks French, so he's into languages. So
yeah, beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, he's an amazing boy. I don't know. I know there's nothing really more worthwhile than being able to give somebody back their life, right? So I get why you do this.
Well,
and I'm sure it's contagious.
It is. Yeah, it is. And maybe you'll catch the bug as well and help some more people. But you've helped so many people just by recording this today with me. And I hope that this message really touches family members and makes them think about maybe the steps that they can take to stop the underlying cause, because there's nothing more important. And so thank you so much for doing all that you did and applying all of the discipline and encouraging your family to go along for the journey. And I'm sending you lots of love and lots of encouragement to keep Cole on the right track. Make sure he's at least operating at 90% all the great foods, just to keep him in a protective zone. And it's just a great story. And let's stay in touch. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Clint. Take care.